You're telling me that humans do what when they're bored? Captain Vkr'lak's 4 eyes widened simultaneously, the bioluminescent splotches on his carapace flashing in what his crew recognized as horrified disbelief. They just sit there and imagine detailed scenarios that never happened, replied Science Officer Grell, her tentacles fidgeting nervously with the holopad. And they enjoy it. That can't be right. The captain's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Vesperian equivalent of nervous laughter. No sentient species would deliberately hallucinate for pleasure. Run another analysis. Sir, I've run it 6 times. Grell's skin shifted to a pale blue, indicating frustration. The humans call it daydreaming. They do it constantly. Some even do it professionally and call it writing fiction. Communications specialist Thrix, who had been silently observing from his console, suddenly interjected. Wait until you hear about what they call horror movies. The bridge fell silent. If you asked the average galactic citizen to name the most terrifying predator species in the known universe, you'd get a pretty standard list. The phase-shifting ravagers of Deneb 4, the telekinetic void mantis, or perhaps the silicon-based crystalline devourers that consume both matter and energy. Humans wouldn't even make the top 1,000, which is precisely what made the current situation aboard the Galactic Alliance exploratory vessel Boundless Curiosity so confusing. This modestly armed science vessel, dispatched to study the anomalous behavior of humans, now found itself being pursued by the Kazek, the apex hunters of the Andromeda Galaxy. For context, the Kazek evolved on a death world with triple Earth's gravity and an atmosphere that would qualify as industrial-grade acid by human standards. Their natural weapons included retractable titanium-dense claws, infrared vision, and the ability to secrete a neurotoxin that could paralyze creatures 10 times their size. They stood 3 meters tall, even when hunched over, which they usually were, because nothing in their evolutionary history had ever given them reason to feel the need to appear smaller or less threatening. The Kazek had encountered thousands of species, conquered hundreds, and considered maybe 5 worthy adversaries. They were now actually running from a single unarmed human transport vessel. Would someone please explain to me? Captain Vkr'lak buzzed, his wings vibrating with agitation. Why the most feared predators in Andromeda are fleeing from a ship that, according to our scans, has a crew of 3 humans and a dog. Sir, Thrix said, his normally confident voice now barely audible. I've been intercepting their communications. The humans, they're telling each other stories. Stories? The captain repeated. What kind of stories could possibly— Horror stories, sir. They're deliberately frightening each other, for fun. The captain's exoskeleton made an audible cracking sound as he stiffened. That's absurd. Why would any species deliberately induce a fear response without survival advantage? Science Officer Grell, who had been analyzing the transmissions, spoke up. Sir, it appears they use fear as entertainment. They create elaborate falsehoods specifically designed to trigger their own fear responses. They call it horror fiction. But that's— The captain struggled to find an appropriate word. Insane? Offered Navigation Officer Plick from her console. Precisely, the captain agreed. No rational species would— Sir! Thrix interrupted, his voice now genuinely alarmed. The Kazek ship is hailing us. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The Kazek were not known for diplomatic communications. They were known for efficiently dismembering anything that crossed their path. Put them through, the captain ordered, straightening his posture in a futile attempt to appear more commanding. The view screen flickered, and the bridge crew collectively flinched as the image of a Kazek warrior filled the screen. Its black chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lighting of their vessel, and its 4 primary arms were each equipped with weapons that looked distressingly biological in nature. Vessel Boundless Curiosity, the Zek's translator rasped, its voice sounding like gravel being crushed. You are tracking the human transport. It wasn't a question. Yes, Captain Vkr'lak replied cautiously. We are conducting research on human behavior patterns. May I ask why your battlecruiser is retreating from an unarmed transport? The Kazek warrior's compound eyes seemed to darken. The humans, they are not right. The bridge crew exchanged confused glances. Could you elaborate? The captain asked. We intercepted their communications. The Kazek actually shuddered, a motion that sent waves through its armored carapace. They were describing in detail creatures that consume consciousness. Entities that exist between dimensions. Predators that hunt through dreams. The Kazek leaned closer to the screen, and they were laughing about it. Well, yes, Science Officer Grell interjected, her professional curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. Humans use fictional narratives as a form of They were debating which of their imaginary horrors would be most effective against us. The Kazek interrupted. They have a collection. Thousands of invented predators, each more biologically impossible than the last. They design weaknesses into their own nightmares to give themselves. The Kazek seemed to struggle with the concept. Hope of survival. The warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly. What kind of species gamifies its own extinction? Before anyone could respond, the Kazek continued. We are predators. We understand the hunt. But humans... It made a guttural sound that the translator couldn't process. They hunt themselves, for pleasure. We will not engage with such madness. The transmission cut off abruptly. The bridge remained silent for several long moments. Well, Captain Zextral finally said, his wings fluttering slightly. I believe we may have discovered something significant about human psychology. Sir, Thrix called out. The human transport is hailing us. The captain sighed. This should be interesting. Put them through. The view screen changed to show a human woman with dark hair tied back, wearing what appeared to be casual clothing rather than any sort of uniform. Behind her, two other humans could be seen arguing over something involving a piece of paper. Hey there, space bugs, the woman said cheerfully. We noticed you've been following us for a while. Just wanted to check if everything's cool. Captain Zextral cleared his throat. Greetings, human vessel. I am Captain Zextral of the Galactic Alliance exploratory vessel, Boundless Curiosity. We are conducting research on interspecies behavioral patterns. Oh, neat. The human smiled, displaying teeth in what the captain had learned was not a threat display, but a sign of friendliness. We're just on our way to the Proxima colony. Name's Lieutenant Fiona West, by the way. Those two idiots behind me are Cal and Joseph, and somewhere around here is Barkley, our emotional support dog. As if summoned, a furry quadruped thrust its face into view, its tongue lolling out of its mouth. Ah yes, the captain nodded formally. We couldn't help but notice your encounter with the Kizek battlecruiser. Their behavior was unexpected. The human, Fiona, rolled her eyes. Those guys? Yeah, they tried to get all intimidating, but then Cal started telling them about this old Earth movie called The Thing, and they freaked out completely. The Thing? Grell inquired, her scientific curiosity piqued. Oh, it's a classic horror film about a shape-shifting alien parasite that perfectly mimics its victims, Fiona explained casually. Cal's a bit of a horror buff. Started describing how the monster worked in really graphic detail. I think he was just trying to gross them out, but they got super weird about it. I see. The captain exchanged glances with his officers. And this thing, it doesn't actually exist? All three humans burst into laughter. Of course not. Fiona wiped her eyes. It's just a movie. Though I gotta say, Cal's theory about how it could actually work using a virus that hijacks and reprograms DNA was pretty convincing. He went to medical school for like a year before dropping out. I see, the captain repeated, though he very much did not see it all. Anyway, Fiona continued, we're running a bit behind schedule. Those Kazek guys really slowed us down with all their threatening and then panicking. Mind if we continue on our way? By all means, Captain Zextral said. We may continue to observe your journey, if that is acceptable. Knock yourselves out, Fiona replied cheerfully. Maybe we can swap some stories later. I bet you guys have some wild ones. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Sir, Grell said finally, I believe we've stumbled upon something extraordinary. The human's ability to conceptualize and communicate fictional threats is apparently so convincing that it can deter even apex predators like the Kizek. A psychological weapon, Plick suggested from navigation. Not even that, Grell countered. They weren't trying to scare the Zek. They were just entertaining themselves. Captain Zextral clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Set a course to continue following the human transport. I want comprehensive documentation of this phenomenon. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, the captain couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were following something far more alien than they had initially realized. For a species with no natural armor, pathetic sensory capabilities, and the physical strength of a malnourished Jovian field mouse, humans had an oddly relaxed attitude about danger. This was the primary observation Captain Zextral had noted in his research log after 3 days of following the human transport. Currently, Science Officer Grell was monitoring the humans' communications as they discussed, with disturbing enthusiasm, various ways they might die on the frontier colony they were heading toward. And that's why I packed the extra radiation pills, the one called Joseph was saying. If the colony's shields fail during a solar storm, we'd be cooked in minutes. Nah, Cal responded. The radiation wouldn't kill you right away. First your hair falls out, then your skin starts sloughing off, then your organs liquefy one by one. Guys, I'm eating here, Fiona complained, though the monitoring system showed her vital signs registered amusement rather than distress. Don't forget the xenomorph possibility, Joseph added, completely ignoring her protest. Those survey reports about acid pools could totally be hiding something with molecular acid for blood. Now you're just stealing from movies, Fiona accused. Life imitates art, Cal said sagely. Remember those brain-boring worms they discovered on Europa? Straight out of the Wrath of Khan. Sir, Grell reported, her skin rippling with confusion. They appear to be actively trying to frighten each other about their destination, but their physiological responses indicate they're enjoying it? Preposterous, the captain muttered, though after 3 days of observation, he was beginning to accept that preposterous was the baseline for human behavior. Sir, Thrix called out suddenly, I'm detecting a distress signal from the human colony on Proxima Centauri B. The captain's antennae perked up. Put it through. The message was fragmented, filled with static, but the panic in the human voice was clear. Unknown hostile lifeforms appeared from the northern mountains. Casualties mounting. Request immediate. The transmission cut off abruptly. Status of the human transport? The captain demanded. They've received the message as well, Thrix confirmed. They're increasing speed toward the colony. They're heading toward the danger? Plick asked incredulously from navigation. Apparently so, the captain said, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Match their course and speed. It seems our research opportunity has expanded. The Proxima Centauri colony was a modest settlement of about 500 humans, established in the shadow of a mountain range on the tidally locked planet's terminator zone, the narrow band between perpetual day and eternal night where conditions were barely habitable. As the human transport approached the landing pad on the outskirts of the colony, the boundless Curiosity maintained a discreet distance, sensors fully active. Life signs? The captain inquired. Confused readings, sir, Grell reported, her tentacles working furiously over her console. I'm detecting approximately 300 human life signatures within the colony perimeter, but there are anomalous readings from the direction of the night side. Definitely not human, but not matching any known species in our database either. The human transport is landing, Thrix announced. They're still attempting to contact the colony, but receiving only sporadic responses. Put me through to the human vessel, the captain ordered. The familiar face of Lieutenant Fiona appeared on screen, now looking considerably more serious than during their previous communication. Captain Zextral, she acknowledged. I assume you've picked up the distress call too. Indeed. Our sensors detect unknown lifeforms approaching from the night side of the planet. I must advise caution, Lieutenant. You are not equipped for combat operations. Fiona's expression hardened. We've got people down there. Maybe we're not a military vessel, but we're still going in. With what weapons? The captain asked, genuinely curious. Fiona gestured vaguely behind her. Cal's got a hunting rifle. I've got my service pistol. Joseph has, a really heavy wrench. The captain's wings fluttered in disbelief. Against an unknown hostile species capable of overwhelming an entire colony? Well, when you put it like that, Fiona grinned, though her vital signs indicated elevated stress levels. Look, we're just going to land, assess the situation, and evacuate whoever we can. We're not looking for a fight. The captain considered this. His mission was research, not intervention. Galactic Alliance protocols were clear about non-interference in potentially species-defining moments. On the other hand, allowing the humans to rush headlong into danger seemed unnecessarily wasteful of fascinating research subjects. We will provide sensor support, he decided. Our ship is not equipped for ground combat either, but we can at least give you information about what you're facing. Relief flickered across Fiona's face. Thanks, Captain. That's actually really helpful. May I ask what your plan is, beyond landing and improvising? Fiona shrugged. Pretty much just that. We humans call it winging it. Winging it? The captain's translator struggled with the idiom. Yeah, you know, making it up as we go along. Fiona gave a small salute. We're landing now. Keep us posted on those sensor readings. The transmission ended. Sir, Grell said hesitantly, are we truly getting involved in this situation? Alliance protocols. We are observing and providing data, the captain corrected. A purely scientific contribution. Prepare a landing party, myself, you, and 2 security officers. We will observe from a safe distance. As his officers prepared, Captain Zextral couldn't help but marvel at the contradictory nature of humans. They deliberately terrified themselves with fictional dangers, yet faced real threats with a casualness that bordered on suicidal. Perhaps there was some connection there, a psychological adaptation that allowed them to function in spite of their physical limitations. Whatever the case, he had a feeling their research was about to take a very interesting turn. The colony was eerily quiet when the human transport landed. The buildings, simple prefabricated structures arranged in a rough grid, showed no obvious signs of damage, but the colony's main square was deserted, with abandoned vehicles and equipment suggesting a hasty departure. The landing party from the Boundless Curiosity arrived shortly after, using personal cloaking devices to remain unobserved as they followed the 3 humans and 1 dog, making their way cautiously through the colony. "I don't like this," Joseph muttered, clutching his wrench with white knuckles. "It's too quiet." "Thanks for the cliché," Cal replied, though his attempt at humor fell flat. He carried what the captain recognized as a primitive projectile weapon, a rifle, if he recalled the term correctly. Fiona, who appeared to be the natural leader despite her earlier casual demeanor, moved with precise, measured steps, her own weapon held at the ready. The dog, Barkley, stayed close to her side, its ears perked and alert. "Movement," Grell whispered to the captain, indicating her scanner. "Multiple signatures approaching from the north." Through his own sensory equipment, the captain could detect them now. At least 30 distinct life forms moving with unsettling coordination. Whatever they weren't using technology. The signatures were purely biological. "Hello?" Fiona called out, her voice echoing between the buildings. "Colony security, anyone?" Her call was answered by a scream, human, female, coming from a building to their left. Without hesitation, all 3 humans rushed toward it, the dog bounding ahead. "Fascinating," the captain murmured. "Their instinct is to move toward the potential danger." "Sir," one of the security officers interjected. "The unknown life forms are changing direction. They appear to be converging on the human's position." "Follow, but maintain distance," the captain ordered. "Remember, we are here to observe only." They trailed the humans to what appeared to be the colony's medical facility. Inside, they found a woman huddled behind an overturned examination table, her lab coat stained with something dark. "Oh, thank God," she gasped when she saw Fiona and the others. "You got our message?" "We did," Fiona confirmed, helping the woman to her feet. "I'm Lieutenant West. This is Cal and Joseph. What happened here?" "Dr. Ellis." The woman introduced herself shakily. "It started 3 days ago. Exploration team came back from the night side. Said they found some kind of structure in the mountains. After that, people started changing." "Changing how?" Cal asked, his grip on his rifle tightening. Dr. Ellis shuddered. "It starts with blackouts. Then they become violent. Their bodies begin to alter. They're not human anymore, not really. They've taken most of the colony. The rest of us are hiding in the emergency bunkers beneath the administration building." "How many survivors?" Fiona asked. "Maybe 100? I came out to gather medical supplies when—" She broke off, her eyes widening as she looked past them toward the entrance. "They're here." The captain and his team had already detected the approaching figures, but nothing in their scans had prepared them for the sight that greeted them as they turned. The creatures had clearly once been human, but were now grotesquely transformed. Their limbs had elongated, joints bending at unnatural angles. Their skin had taken on a grayish hue and seemed to shift and ripple as if something moved beneath it. But most disturbing were their faces, features stretched and distorted, mouths unnaturally wide and filled with needle-like teeth. "Holy shit," Joseph whispered, raising his wrench. "They look like something straight out of—" "Don't say it." Cal cut him off, raising his rifle. "Don't you dare say it." From their hidden vantage point, Captain Zextral and his team watched in fascinated horror as the transformed humans shambled forward, moving with a jerky, unsettling gait. "Sir," Grell whispered, her skin blanched to an almost white shade. "These creatures match descriptions from human horror fiction. Specifically, a category they call body horror, the fear of one's own body being corrupted or transformed." "Are you suggesting," the captain hissed back, "that human fiction is becoming reality?" Before Grell could respond, the standoff in the medical facility erupted into chaos. One of the creatures lunged forward with impossible speed, forcing Cal to fire his rifle. The shot struck the creature in the chest, causing it to stagger back, but only momentarily. The wound seemed to close almost immediately, the creature's flesh knitting itself back together. "Run!" Fiona shouted, firing her own weapon to provide cover as they retreated through a back door, Dr. Ellis in tow. The Galactic Alliance team followed, maintaining their distance but keeping the humans in sight as they fled through the colony's empty streets. "We need to get to the administration building," Dr. Ellis gasped as they ran. "The bunker entrance is in the basement." "What about these things?" Joseph asked. "Bullets barely slow them down." "Fire," Cal suggested grimly. "Fire usually works in the movies." "This isn't a movie, Cal," Fiona snapped, but there was a note of consideration in her voice. "Though thermal decontamination might work. The colony has flame units for clearing hazardous biological materials." "Where?" Joseph asked. "Equipment shed near the perimeter fence, but it's in the other direction from the administration building." They skidded to a halt at an intersection, momentarily indecisive. "Split up?" Cal suggested. "Bad idea," Fiona and Joseph said simultaneously. "I'll go," Cal decided. "You two get the doc to the bunker. I'll meet you there with the flame units." "Cal..." Fiona began to protest. "We don't have time to argue," he cut her off. "Barkley, go with them." The dog whined, but obediently stayed with Fiona as Cal took off down a side street. Captain Zekstral made a quick decision. "Grell, you and Officer Tlack follow the main group. Officer Vreen and I will track the lone human." They separated, the captain following the human called Cal as he sprinted toward the colony's perimeter. The transformed humans seemed to be everywhere now, emerging from buildings and alleyways, their movements becoming more coordinated, more purposeful. Cal reached the equipment shed and forced the door open, disappearing inside. Moments later, a crash and a curse suggested he'd encountered difficulty. The captain hesitated. His mission was to observe, not intervene. And yet, a piercing scream from inside the shed decided the matter. Deactivating his cloaking device, Captain Zekstral burst through the door, Officer Vreen close behind. "So you guys have been following us this whole time?" Cal asked as they made their way through the colony's maintenance tunnels, a network of underground passages that Officer Vreen had discovered on the colony's schematics. "For research purposes," the captain confirmed, his compound eyes scanning ahead for threats. "Your species' relationship with fear is unusual." Cal snorted. "That's one way of putting it. So what's your research telling you now?" "That humans have an inexplicable talent for finding themselves in precisely the situations they seem to fear most," the captain replied dryly. "These transformed humans, they resemble creatures from your fiction." "Yeah, I noticed that too," Cal said grimly. "They're like something straight out of The Thing crossed with Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Which is seriously messed up, because I was just telling the Kazek about The Thing a few days ago." The captain's wings fluttered in agitation. "You believe there is a connection?" Cal shrugged. "I don't know, man. But it's pretty weird that we encounter monsters that look exactly like something out of human horror movies." They fell silent as they approached a junction in the tunnels. According to the schematics, they were now directly beneath the administration building. "We should be close to the bunker entrance," the captain said. "Can you contact your companions?" Cal pulled out a communication device and spoke into it. "Fiona? Joseph? You guys make it to the bunker?" After a moment of static, Fiona's voice came through. "Cal? Where are you?" "Maintenance tunnels with some, unexpected allies. Long story. We're under the administration building. Got the flame units, too." "Thank God. We're in the bunker with the survivors, but those things are trying to break through the main door. We need you here ASAP." "On our way. How do we get to you?" "There should be an access hatch in section C7 of the tunnels that leads directly to the bunker's secondary entrance." "Roger that. Stay safe." Cal pocketed the device and turned to the captain. "You heard the lady. Section C7. They continued through the tunnels, eventually finding the access hatch Fiona had mentioned. It opened into a narrow corridor that led to a heavy metal door. "This must be it," Cal said, approaching the door and knocking in a specific pattern. After a moment, the door swung open to reveal Joseph, still clutching his wrench, now stained with a dark, viscous substance. "Cal!" His eyes widened as he noticed the aliens. "And friends?" "They're cool," Cal assured him, stepping inside. "Where's Fiona?" Joseph gestured toward the main area of the bunker, a large open space filled with frightened colonists. "Organizing defenses. Those things have been trying to get through the main door for the past hour." As if on cue, a loud banging echoed through the bunker, followed by the sound of metal straining under pressure. "Won't hold much longer," Joseph said grimly. "Please tell me those flame units work." "Only one way to find out," Cal replied, shrugging off the unit and examining its controls. "Seems simple enough. Point and shoot." Captain Zekstral followed Cal into the main area, aware of the stares from the human colonists. His research had not prepared him for direct interaction with this many humans at once, and he found their collective emotional output overwhelming. Fiona approached, Barkley at her heels. "Captain, what are you doing here?" "The situation escalated," he replied simply. "We chose to intervene." Before Fiona could respond, a deafening crash announced the failure of the main door. Metal buckled and tore as transformed humans began to pour through the breach. "Get ready!" Fiona shouted, raising her pistol. Cal stepped forward, flame unit at the ready. "Stand back!" A jet of blue-white flame erupted from the unit, engulfing the first wave of creatures. Their inhuman screams filled the bunker as they burned, their corrupted flesh blackening and peeling away to reveal something underneath that was definitely not human anatomy. "It's working!" Joseph yelled. "Don't celebrate yet," Cal called back, continuing to spray flame at the entrance. "There are more coming." Captain Zekstral made a quick decision. "Officer Vreen, assist the human with the flame unit. Officer Tlack, help secure the civilians. Science Officer Grell with me. We need to understand what we're facing." As his officers moved to comply, the captain approached Dr. Ellis, who was treating injured colonists near the back of the bunker. "Doctor," he began, his translator struggling to convey urgency through his buzzing vocalization. "The structure your exploration team found on the night side, what was it exactly?" Dr. Ellis looked up, her face haggard with exhaustion. "Some kind of temple," they said. "Ancient. Alien writing on the walls. They brought back artifacts. Thought they might be historically significant. Where are these artifacts now?" The doctor pointed to a storage room off the main bunker. "In there. Exploration team started changing not long after they started studying them." The captain exchanged glances with Grell. "We need to examine those artifacts." While the battle continued at the bunker entrance, the humans showing surprising competence with their primitive weapons, the captain and Grell made their way to the storage room. Inside, they found a collection of strange objects arranged on a table, twisted sculptures of an unidentifiable black material, tablets covered in symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly, and a central piece that resembled a small pyramid. "These are not natural formations," Grell observed, her tentacles hovering cautiously over the objects without touching them. "The material composition is unusual. I'm detecting traces of an unknown element." The captain's comprehensive sensory apparatus picked up subtle vibrations emanating from the pyramid. "This object is emitting something. Not radiation, not sound, but something." "Psychic emanations?" Grell suggested. "Some species are sensitive to telepathic influence," the captain realized suddenly. "The Kazek. Remember what they said about the human stories? About creatures that hunt through dreams? What if these artifacts somehow extract fears from the mind and make them manifest?" Grell's skin rippled with excitement. "A psychoreactive material that responds to thought patterns. It could explain why the transformed humans resemble creatures from human fiction. The artifacts are using the colonists' own fears against them. We need to destroy these," the captain decided. "Particularly this central pyramid. It appears to be the source of the emanations." A crash from outside interrupted their discussion. The sounds of fighting had intensified. "Captain!" Officer Tlack's voice came over the communicator. "We cannot hold them much longer. The flame units are running low on fuel." "Bring one of the flame units here," the captain ordered. "Quickly!" Moments later, Cal appeared in the doorway, his face streaked with soot, the flame unit sputtering in his hands. "Almost out of juice. What's the plan?" "These artifacts," the captain explained rapidly. "They're the source. They're manifesting your species' fears into reality. We need to destroy them." Cal's eyes widened as he looked at the collection. "Seriously, but they're just... Wait." He stepped closer to the pyramid, staring at it intensely. "I've seen this before. In a movie called Event Horizon. There was this thing that... Do not think about it!" The captain interrupted urgently. "Your thoughts may influence its effect." Too late. The pyramid began to pulse with an eerie light, and the symbols on the tablet started to crawl across the surface like living things. "Burn it," the captain ordered. Now. Cal didn't need to be told twice. He aimed the flame unit at the collection and unleashed the last of its fuel in a concentrated burst. The artifacts began to melt, the black material bubbling and hissing as it was consumed. The pyramid, however, seemed resistant to the flames. As the fire died away, it remained intact, though now glowing with an intense, malevolent light. "That's not good," Cal muttered. The captain made a split-second decision. Reaching into his equipment belt, he withdrew a small device, a portable singularity generator. Standard issue for Vesperian research vessels in case of containment breaches. Stand back, he warned, activating the device and placing it next to the pyramid. This will create a localized micro-singularity. It should consume the artifact completely. A what now? Cal's eyes widened. Like a tiny black hole? Are you insane? It's controlled, the captain assured him, though his mandibles clicked nervously. Mostly. We need to evacuate, Grell insisted, her skin turning a bright, alarmed red. A micro-singularity in these conditions? No time. The captain cut her off, setting the device. 10-second countdown initiated. Run! They bolted from the storage room, Cal shouting warnings as they went. The captain felt his wings vibrating with exertion as they reached the main area of the bunker, where the battle against the transformed humans had reached a desperate pitch. Everyone down! The captain buzzed at maximum volume, his translator broadcasting in multiple frequencies. Cover your sensory organs! The humans, to their credit, reacted quickly, dropping to the floor just as a violent implosion shook the entire bunker. The air seemed to twist and distort as the micro-singularity formed and consumed the artifacts, creating a momentary vacuum that sucked debris toward the storage room before collapsing in on itself with a thunderous crack. And then silence. The transformed humans had stopped their attack. They stood frozen in place, as if suddenly disconnected from whatever force had been controlling them. Then, one by one, they began to collapse, their grotesquely altered bodies shuddering and returning slowly, painfully to human form. It worked, Fiona breathed, rising cautiously to her feet. They're changing back. The influence is broken, the captain confirmed, his compound eyes detecting the subtle energy patterns dissipating throughout the bunker. The artifact was projecting a field that affected human neurology, triggering transformation based on subconscious fear responses. Cal looked around at the dazed, recovering colonists. So basically their brains were hijacked by alien tech that turned them into monsters from our own nightmares? A crude but essentially accurate assessment, Grell agreed, her tentacles waving in scientific excitement despite the situation. That's messed up, Joseph commented, finally lowering his wrench. But also kind of awesome? I mean, not for them, obviously, he added hastily, noting the glares from his companions. Dr. Ellis was already moving among the transformed colonists, checking vital signs. They're stabilizing, she reported. Whatever was affecting them seems to be wearing off. The next few hours were a blur of activity as the surviving colonists emerged from their hiding places and began treating the injured. The previously transformed humans had no memory of their actions while under the influence of the artifacts, which the captain insisted was probably for the best. So let me get this straight, Fiona said, sitting across from Captain Zek's trowel in what remained of the colony's mess hall. It had been 3 days since the destruction of the artifacts, and a semblance of normalcy was slowly returning to the colony. An ancient alien civilization left behind technology that feeds on fear? Not exactly feeds, the captain corrected, his wings folded neatly against his back. More accurately, it amplifies and manifests fear. Based on our analysis of the residual energy patterns, we believe it was designed as a defense system. Some defense system, Cal scoffed, joining them with a cup of what humans called coffee, a stimulant beverage that the captain had politely declined to sample after scanning its contents. It nearly wiped out the colony. I believe that was precisely its purpose, the captain replied. Consider, an ancient species creates a defensive weapon that turns a potential invader's own fears against them. The more frightening the invaders find the unknown, the more effective the weapon. But humans are particularly susceptible, Grell added, her skin now a calm blue as she referenced data on her pad. Your species not only fears the unknown, you actively imagine the worst possible scenarios. You create entire categories of fiction dedicated to exploring your own fears. Horror movies, Joseph nodded, pulling up a chair. So you're saying we basically programmed the weapon with our own nightmares? In a manner of speaking, yes, the captain confirmed. The artifacts were inert until exposed to minds that already contained detailed templates of fears. Once activated by your exploration team, they began broadcasting these templates, affecting the neurochemistry of humans within range. Turning them into the monsters from our own heads, Fiona mused. But why didn't it affect us when we arrived? Distance, perhaps, Grell suggested. Or exposure time. The colonists had been near the artifacts for days before the transformations began. Or maybe, Cal said with a grin, we were already so busy freaking ourselves out with horror stories that the artifacts couldn't get a foothold. Can't scare someone who's already scaring themselves, right? The captain's antennae twitched thoughtfully. An interesting hypothesis. Your casual relationship with fear may indeed provide a form of psychological immunity. The artifacts work by exploiting fear of the unknown. But you humans have already imagined the unknown in exhaustive detail. We've pre-scared ourselves, Joseph laughed. That's hilarious. It's also potentially significant, the captain said, his tone serious. This may explain why the Xek retreated from your transport. As apex predators, they rely on instilling fear in their prey. When confronted with a species that voluntarily exposes itself to fear as entertainment, that has effectively domesticated fear, they found themselves at a psychological disadvantage. So our weird horror movie obsession is actually a superpower? Cal asked, clearly delighted by the notion. I wouldn't go that far, the captain hedged, though privately he was beginning to wonder if there wasn't something to that assessment. But it does suggest an unusual evolutionary adaptation. Most species develop fear responses to avoid danger. Your species has developed the ability to compartmentalize and even derive pleasure from fear, allowing you to function in situations that would paralyze other sentient beings. Fiona leaned back, a thoughtful expression on her face. You know, that actually makes sense. Humans have always been good at adapting to scary situations. We tell ghost stories around campfires and watch horror movies on date night. We turn the things that terrify us into entertainment. It's like psychological vaccination, Joseph suggested. A little dose of fear in a controlled environment builds up immunity to the real thing. The captain's compound eyes fixed on Joseph. A remarkably apt analogy. Your fictional horrors may indeed function as a form of inoculation against genuine existential terror. The conversation might have continued in this philosophical vein, but it was interrupted by the arrival of Barclay, who bounded into the mess hall with his tail wagging enthusiastically, followed by a group of colonist children who had apparently adopted the dog as their collective therapy animal. Psychological support canine appears to be fulfilling its function, Grell observed with scientific detachment, though the captain noticed her tentacles gently patting the dog's head when it approached their table. One standard week later, repairs to the colony were well underway, and the Boundless Curiosity was preparing to depart. The captain stood at the bottom of the ship's ramp, facing the three humans who had unwittingly become the subjects of his most fascinating research to date. I've transmitted coordinates of the alien structure to Galactic Alliance headquarters, he informed them. A specialized containment team will arrive within the month to secure the site. I strongly recommend avoiding that region until they arrive. Don't worry, Fiona assured him. We've implemented a strict no-touching weird alien artifacts policy. About time, Cal muttered. I've been saying that since day one. You literally suggested we should bring back a cool souvenir from our first deep space assignment, Joseph reminded him. I've grown as a person since then, Cal replied with dignity. The captain's wings fluttered in what the humans had come to recognize as amusement. I have completed my research report on human fear responses. My findings will be controversial. Let me guess, Fiona said with a smile. The Galactic Alliance isn't going to believe that the deadliest predators in Andromeda ran away because Cal told them the plot of the thing? The statistical probability of such a report being accepted without corroborating evidence is approximately 0.023%, the captain acknowledged. However, the data regarding your species' unique relationship with fear will be valuable regardless. What's the conclusion of your report? Joseph asked. Are humans fearless or just weird? The captain considered this. Neither, and both. Your species experiences fear as intensely as any I have encountered, perhaps more so given your neurological structures. But you have developed a cultural adaptation that allows you to process and utilize fear rather than being paralyzed by it. You imagine the worst before it happens, and in doing so, prepare yourselves to face it. So basically, Cal summarized, our bizarre habit of scaring ourselves for fun has accidentally turned us into the most psychologically resilient species in the galaxy? I would not go that far, the captain said, though his mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. But it has certainly made you unpredictable. And in the cosmos, unpredictability can be a significant advantage. Barclay chose that moment to dart forward, presenting the captain with a stick, tail wagging expectantly. I believe your emotional support canine wishes to engage in projectile retrieval behavior, the captain observed solemnly. He wants you to throw the stick, Fiona translated, grinning. With surprising gentleness, the captain took the stick in his clawed appendage and tossed it across the landing pad. Barclay raced after it, returning moments later to drop it at Officer Grell's feet instead. I believe I have been snubbed, the captain noted. Nah, he's just including everyone, Cal explained. Dogs are social like that. After a few more rounds of stick throwing, during which even the stoic Officer Vreen was persuaded to participate, the time for departure could no longer be delayed. We will include mention of your assistance in our report, the captain informed the humans as his crew boarded the ship, though I suspect Alliance bureaucracy will redact much of it. Probably for the best, Fiona replied. We're not really supposed to be making first contact with alien species on routine transport runs. Hey, before you go, Cal said suddenly. I've been meaning to ask, do bugs in space watch horror movies? Like, do you have your own version of Alien where the monster is a giant human that hunts you with taxation paperwork or something? The captain's antennae twitched. I am not a bug, he corrected again, though with resigned tolerance. And no, most Vesperian entertainment focuses on complex mathematical patterns and chemical composition symphonies. Sounds riveting, Joseph commented, clearly unable to imagine anything more boring. However, the captain continued, I must admit that after this experience I find myself curious about your horror fiction. Perhaps there is something to be learned from it. I've got a whole library of classics on my personal drive, Cal offered eagerly. I could copy them for you. Start with The Thing, obviously, but you should also check out Alien, The Exorcist, Hereditary. A curated selection would be appreciated, the captain interrupted, gesturing to Grell, who extended a data transfer device. As the final preparations for departure were completed, Captain Vkr'lak found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, something his species rarely encountered in their highly structured society. It took him a moment to identify it, anticipation mixed with uncertainty, the human concept of looking forward to something unknown. Perhaps, he reflected as he ascended the ramp, there was something to learn from these strange, contradictory beings after all. 6 cycles later, in a secure viewing chamber aboard the Galactic Alliance headquarters station, a most unusual screening was taking place. I still don't understand why they would deliberately expose themselves to such stimuli, High Commander Jax Vril commented, his exoskeleton creaking as he shifted uncomfortably. The human in the narrative clearly knows the cellular entity will assimilate and replicate its companions, yet they continue to investigate rather than initiating immediate quarantine protocols. That's precisely the point, Captain Vkr'lak explained, his wings vibrating with excitement. The humans derive satisfaction from the tension between knowledge and uncertainty, between the inevitable and the preventable. Around the chamber, various high-ranking Alliance officials from a dozen species watched the human horror film, with reactions ranging from fascination to disgust to incomprehension. And they find this pleasurable? Asked a Medusan diplomat, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep confusion. Not exactly pleasure, the captain clarified. More like controlled stress exposure. Think of it as psychological training. By voluntarily experiencing fear in a safe context, they build resilience for actual dangerous situations. The screening continued, punctuated by occasional gasps or clicks of disapproval from the assembled dignitaries. When it concluded, the lights came up, and the High Commander called for attention. Captain Vkr'lak's report suggests that this unusual human trait may have significant implications for galactic security, he announced. The Kzek retreat was unprecedented and troubling. If human psychological patterns can deter apex predator species, we must consider both the potential threat and the potential alliance value this represents. A Quantuvian observer, its gaseous form swirling in agitation, pulsed a question. Are we to understand that the most fearsome hunters in known space were frightened away by stories? Not exactly, the captain replied. The Kzek were confronted with a species that voluntarily exposes itself to its own worst fears, that has, in effect, domesticated fear. To a predator that relies on fear as a weapon, this is deeply unsettling. Like trying to drown a species that has invented swimming, offered a Tellurian representative, its root-like appendages twisting thoughtfully. Precisely, the captain agreed. Moreover, our encounter with the fear-manifesting artifacts suggests that human psychological adaptations provide a form of resistance to certain types of psychic influence. Their habit of pre-scaring themselves may be an accidental but effective defense mechanism. The High Commander's compound eyes fixed on the captain. Your recommendation, then? Captain Vkr'lak's antennae straightened with conviction. Formal diplomatic recognition and accelerated integration into Alliance protocols. Humans may lack natural weapons, armor, or sensory advantages, but their psychological resilience represents an evolutionary adaptation of remarkable effectiveness. In a galaxy of apex predators, they have developed the ultimate defense. They have befriended their fear. As the council erupted into buzzing debate, the captain allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His research had taken an unexpected turn, but had yielded insights far more valuable than he could have anticipated. Somewhere in the vastness of space, a human transport vessel continued its journey, its crew telling each other ghost stories to pass the time, blissfully unaware that their campfire tales had become their species' most effective shield against the terrors that lurked between the stars. And behind them, keeping a respectful distance, a Kazekh battlecruiser followed, its crew monitoring human communications with a mixture of horror and fascination, trying desperately to understand the species that found their own extinction entertaining. In their command center, the Zek war commander reviewed the latest intercepted human entertainment broadcast, something called survival horror gaming, and felt something unfamiliar ripple through its predatory instincts. For the first time in the evolutionary history of the Kazekh, an apex hunter experienced the sensation of being prey. It was, the war commander reflected as it watched humans voluntarily expose themselves to simulated death scenarios for achievement points, perhaps time to reconsider their expansion plans. Some prey, after all, was simply not worth hunting, especially prey that smiled at its own nightmares. The end. Through the viewport, they watched as rippling waves of quantum distortion spread across the Krell outpost, distorting and warping the structures like a mirage in desert heat. The communications array collapsed in on itself, imploding in a spectacular display of quantum physics gone haywire. "Stabilizing orbit," Zenzi reported, her feathered hands moving with precision across the shuttle's controls. "Detecting multiple Krell vessels mobilizing from the far side of the moon." "Get us out of here," James ordered. "Maximum stealth protocols. Set course for the rendezvous point." As the shuttle accelerated away from the devastated outpost, James finally had a moment to assess his team. They were battered, exhausted, but alive, all of them. Kaleth's silicon form showed concerning fractures along his left side where the Krell commander had struck him. Trillax's normally iridescent skin had dulled to a pale blue, a sign of extreme fatigue in their species. Drell was nursing what appeared to be a minor plasma burn on one arm. But their eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, all held the same expression, the stunned realization that they had done it. They had survived. "Vkr'lak," James turned to their technical specialist. "Status of the intelligence data?" "Secure and intact," Vkr'lak confirmed, holding up the specialized data crystal that contained their hard-won information. 73% of total available data, including all primary battle plans and fleet deployments. "More than enough," James nodded. "Zenzi, open a secure channel to Admiral Vkr'lak, Priority Alpha." As Zenzi established the connection, James moved among his team, checking injuries and offering quiet words of encouragement. When he reached Kaleth, the silicon being looked up at him with crystalline eyes that somehow managed to convey both pain and satisfaction. "Your tactics were unconventional, Captain," Kaleth rumbled. "Not what we were taught at the Academy." "But effective," Trillax interjected, their skin beginning to regain some of its normal luster. "Effective because of you," James corrected. "All of you. You adapted, improvised, and overcame. That's what real combat is about. Not textbook maneuvers or perfect formations, but the ability to make the right decisions under pressure." "Secure channel established," Zenzi announced. "Admiral Vkr'lak standing by." James moved to the communications station, activating the visual link. The Admiral's blue face appeared on the screen, all six eyes widening at the sight of James's battered appearance. "Captain Harper," Vkr'lak's voice betrayed a rare hint of emotion. "Your team's life signs disappeared from our monitors shortly after the quantum disruption was detected. We feared the worst. The disruption interfered with our transponders," James explained. "But we're all here, Admiral. Mission accomplished." "All of you?" The Admiral's skin lightened with what James had come to recognize as surprise. "Our tactical projections indicated an 82% probability of at least 2 casualties." "Your tactical projections didn't account for the quality of these cadets," James replied, glancing back at his team with undisguised pride. "They performed beyond every expectation." "And the intelligence?" "We have it. Complete data on the Krell offensive plans, including timing, vectors, and fleet compositions. We also confirmed that their communications array at Outpost Sigma-7 is completely neutralized. The Krell forces in that sector will be unable to coordinate for at least 72 hours. The Admiral's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. Deep satisfaction. Well done, Captain Harper. The unified fleet is already moving into defensive positions. Your intelligence will allow us to optimize our deployment. We'll transmit the data as soon as we're clear of the Vega system, James promised. There are still Krell patrols searching for us. Of course, the Admiral nodded. Proceed to the rendezvous point with all due caution. A medical team will be standing by for your team's injuries. After ending the transmission, James returned to his team. They had moved to the shuttle's small mess area, gathering around a table in a tableau that struck him as profoundly poignant. 5 alien cadets, each from a different species, unified by their shared experience. How long to the rendezvous point? He asked Zenzi. 4 hours, 17 minutes at current speed, she chirped. Stealth systems functioning at optimal levels, no indication of pursuit. James nodded. Good. Everyone should rest while they can. That includes you, Zenzi. Set the autopilot for the next hour at least. As the others found makeshift sleeping arrangements around the shuttle, Vkr'lak approached James. Captain, they began, their skin shifting through patterns of blue and green that James had learned indicated deep thought. I have been considering something you said before the mission. What's that? About humans not being naturally bloodthirsty, but simply unable to forget how to fight. Vkr'lak elaborated. Today I believe I understand what you meant. James waited, sensing there was more. When I confronted the Krell commander, Vkr'lak continued, I felt no pleasure in causing harm. Only necessity. Is that how it is for you? James considered the question carefully. That's part of it. The best warriors, human or otherwise, don't fight because they enjoy it. They fight because sometimes it's the only way to protect what matters. And the killing? Vkr'lak asked softly. Does it become easier with time? No, James replied honestly. Not if you're doing it right. The day it becomes easy is the day you've lost something important. Vkr'lak's skin rippled in a pattern James hadn't seen before. Yet you have killed hundreds. Because I had to, James said simply. Not because I wanted to. There's a difference. Vkr'lak seemed to absorb this, their skin gradually settling into a calm, steady blue. Thank you, Captain, for the truth, and for bringing us all back alive. As the cadet moved away to find rest, James settled into the pilot's chair beside Zenzi, gazing out at the star-filled void. The mission had been successful beyond anyone's expectations, but he knew the war was far from over. The Krell would regroup, adapt, and attack again. But something fundamental had changed today. 5 cadets from 5 different species had proven that the unified forces could adapt too. That they could learn to fight with human determination while maintaining their own moral center. Perhaps that was the true significance of his kill count. Not the number itself, but what it represented. The hard-won experience of a species that had learned through centuries of conflict that sometimes survival required making difficult choices. It wasn't a point of pride, but a burden of knowledge. Knowledge that he was now passing on to a galactic civilization that desperately needed it. As the shuttle slipped silently through space, leaving the devastated Krell outpost behind, James Harper felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Hope. The ceremony was unlike anything James had ever experienced. The grand hall of the Unified Forces Academy gleamed with crystalline splendor, its transparent ceiling offering a view of Nexus Prime's twin moons, hanging like jewels in the night sky. Dignitaries from 17 species filled the chamber, their diverse physiologies creating a living mosaic of galactic cooperation. At the front of the hall stood Admiral Vkr'lak, resplendent in formal uniform, his 6 eyes surveying the assembled crowd with solemn dignity. Beside him stood the 5 cadets, no longer cadets as of today, who had accompanied James on what was now being called the Sigma-7 operation. 2 weeks had passed since their return. 2 weeks in which the intelligence they'd gathered had enabled the unified fleet to repel the Krell offensive with minimal casualties. 2 weeks of debriefings, medical treatments, and growing recognition that something fundamental had changed in the war. James stood at attention in his dress uniform, a hybrid design that incorporated elements of Earth military tradition while conforming to unified forces standards. The medal they were about to present him felt unnecessary, even uncomfortable. He hadn't done this for recognition. Captain James Harper. Admiral Vkr'lak's voice carried clearly through the hall as he began the formal address. Step forward. James approached the raised platform where the Admiral stood, conscious of the hundreds of alien eyes watching his every move. He stopped at the prescribed distance and saluted, a human gesture that had been incorporated into Unified Forces protocol since Earth's admission. The Security Council of the Galactic Unified Forces recognizes your extraordinary service during the Sigma-7 operation. the Admiral continued. Your leadership, tactical acumen, and commitment to your team exemplify the highest ideals of our combined forces. The Admiral's 6 eyes fixed on James with an intensity that seemed to communicate something beyond the formal words. When you first joined our ranks, Captain Harper, many questioned the wisdom of incorporating human combat methodologies into our doctrine. Your combat statistics were viewed with concern rather than appreciation. A ripple of soft sounds, the alien equivalent of murmured agreement, passed through the audience. Today we recognize that our concern was misplaced, the Admiral continued. Not because those statistics were insignificant, but because we failed to understand their true meaning. They represented not a callous disregard for life, but rather the hard-won knowledge of what is sometimes necessary to preserve it. The Admiral gestured to the 5 newly commissioned officers standing nearby. These 5 officers, the first graduates of what will now be called the Harper Combat Doctrine Program, have demonstrated that the best of human tactical thinking can be successfully integrated with our own traditions. They return to us not as mindless killers, but as warriors who understand both the necessity of combat and its true cost. James glanced at his former students, feeling a surge of pride. Kaleth stood tall, his silicon form repaired but bearing new patterns that would permanently mark his encounter with the Krell commander. Trillax's skin glowed with patterns of blue and gold, pride and accomplishment. Vkr'lak's 4 arms were perfectly still in formal rest position, a difficult feat for his species. Zenzi's feathers were preened to perfection, though she couldn't quite suppress the slight vibration of excitement. And Drell's scales shimmered in the ceremonial lighting, their normally restless form completely motionless in respect. The Admiral lifted a medal, a stylized representation of the Unified Forces emblem, modified with a small Earth symbol at its center. For exceptional courage, tactical innovation, and preservation of life against overwhelming odds, I hereby present you with the Star of Galactic Valor, First Class, only the 7th such award in our history, and the first to a human warrior. As the Admiral placed the medal around his neck, James remained at attention, uncomfortable with the formality, but understanding its importance to the assembled dignitaries. Captain Harper, the Admiral concluded, the Security Council has unanimously approved your appointment as Commander of Special Operations Training, with authority to implement your combat doctrine across all Unified Forces academies. The Krell threat continues, but thanks to you and your team, we now face it with new understanding and new resolve. The ceremony continued with the formal commissioning of his 5 former cadets, each receiving their officers' insignia and new assignments. When the formalities finally concluded, the gathering transitioned to a more relaxed reception. As James stood somewhat awkwardly near a refreshment station, trying to identify something that might be compatible with human biology, Dr. Elvira approached. Congratulations, Commander Harper. The xenopsychologist greeted him, her translucent tentacles moving in what he had come to recognize as an amused pattern. Though you seem less than comfortable with your new accolades. The medal feels a bit much, James admitted. I was just doing my job. A very human response, Dr. Elvira observed. Most species would savor such recognition for decades. I'm more interested in the new training program, James replied. The real victory isn't what we did at Sigma 7, but what it represents for the future. Indeed. The doctor's skin shifted to a thoughtful hue. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of your 5 graduates. Most fascinating. How so? They've integrated aspects of human combat psychology without sacrificing their core ethical frameworks, she explained. They've learned to fight like humans without becoming human, if you'll pardon the phrasing. That's exactly what I hoped for, James nodded. It was never about turning them into copies of human soldiers. It was about helping them find their own path to effective defense. A path that now includes killing when necessary, Dr. Elvira noted, watching him carefully. Yes, James acknowledged without hesitation, but also knowing when not to kill. That's equally important. Before the doctor could respond, Trillax approached, their iridescent skin glowing with formal patterns that indicated their new officer status. Commander Harper, they greeted him with the precise formality of a newly commissioned officer. Dr. Elvira, Lieutenant Trillax. James returned the greeting with equal formality, before allowing himself a smile. How does it feel? Strange, Trillax admitted, their skin rippling briefly with patterns of uncertainty before returning to formal mode. But purposeful. The best things often are, James replied. I understand you've been assigned to the new Special Operations Unit. Yes, sir. Along with the others from our team, we'll be implementing your combat doctrine with the Forward Defense Fleet. They couldn't have chosen better officers for the task. James said sincerely. Vkr'lak hesitated, then asked, "Will you be joining us in the field, Commander?" "Eventually," James nodded. "But first I need to establish the training program. There are more cadets who need to learn what you've learned." "About killing?" Dr. Elvira asked, her scientific curiosity evident. "About surviving," James corrected. "And about making sure others survive too, even when that requires difficult choices." Vkr'lak's skin shifted to the deep blue of understanding. "Before I met you, Commander, I viewed your kill count as something monstrous. 200 lives ended." "And now?" Dr. Elvira prompted when the lieutenant paused. "Now I understand it represents 200 moments when Captain Harper made the hardest choice possible," Vkr'lak replied. "Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because the alternative was worse." James felt something tighten in his chest at the simple but profound understanding in the alien officer's words. "Precisely," he nodded. "And if I've done my job right, you'll never accumulate a count like mine. Not because you'll avoid necessary combat, but because you'll find better solutions when they exist." Epilogue, 2 years later. "Incoming Krell vessels, formation Delta. All units prepare for engagement." The warning echoed through the bridge of the UFS Intrepid, the Unified Forces' newest tactical response vessel. Commander James Harper stood at the central command station, watching as the holographic display tracked the approaching Krell fleet. 17 warships, standard offensive pattern, reported Lieutenant Commander Vkr'lak from the tactical station, their skin shifting through analytical patterns of blue and green. "But something's different about their formation. There's a variance in their approach vector I haven't seen before." James studied the display, noting the subtle irregularity. After 2 years of almost continuous engagement with the Krell, he had developed an intuitive feel for their tactics. This was indeed something new. "They're adapting," he observed. "Again." "As are we," replied Captain Vkr'lak from the command chair, his 4 arms manipulating different control interfaces simultaneously. Since their mission to Sigma-7, Vkr'lak had risen quickly through the ranks, eventually taking command of the Intrepid with James serving as his strategic operations officer. "All Harper Protocol units report ready for engagement," announced Kaleth from the communications station. The Silicon being's form now bore multiple battle scars, each one a testament to his growing legend among the unified forces. James allowed himself a small smile at the designation. Harper Protocol had become the official term for the integrated human galactic combat doctrine he had developed. What had begun with 5 cadets had expanded to 17 specialized combat units spread throughout the fleet. "Zenzi, take us in. Attack pattern Sigma-3, Vkr'lak ordered. "Acknowledged, Captain," the avian officer responded from the helm, her feathered hands dancing across the controls with astonishing speed. "Executing Sigma-3. The Intrepid surged forward, leading the Unified Forces task group in a complex maneuver that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. Instead of the defensive, reactive posture that had characterized their early encounters with the Krell, the fleet now moved with aggressive precision, seizing tactical advantages before they fully developed. "Commander," Vkr'lak called, "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the lead Krell vessel. They may have developed new weaponry." "Tactical analysis?" James requested, moving to Vkr'lak's station. "Unknown, but the energy pattern shares characteristics with their biological systems, rather than their conventional weapons," the lieutenant commander replied. "I recommend caution." James nodded, turning to Vkr'lak. "Captain, suggest we modify our approach. Let's pull back the forward elements and probe their response with long-range sensors." Vkr'lak considered for only a moment before nodding. "Agreed. Zenzi, execute tactical withdrawal to position Alpha 7. Kaleth, signal the task group to maintain formation interval." As the fleet adjusted its approach, James studied the lead Krell vessel. 2 years of conflict had taught both sides much about the other. The Krell had proven more adaptable than initially believed, constantly evolving their tactics and technology in response to Unified Forces' successes. But the Unified Forces had evolved as well, incorporating the best of human combat experiences with the advanced technology and diverse biological capabilities of the galactic community. It was no longer just about human tactics being applied by alien soldiers. It had become something new, a true synthesis. "They're responding to our withdrawal," Vkr'lak reported. "Adjusting formation to... Wait, they're breaking pattern." The holographic display showed the Krell fleet suddenly dispersing, individual vessels moving in seemingly random directions. "This is new," James murmured. "Drell, what are your sensors telling you?" From the enhanced sensory station specifically designed for their reptilian perceptive abilities, Lieutenant Commander Drell's forked tongue flicked rapidly as they processed vast amounts of data. The dispersal is not random, Drell reported. They're establishing a multi-vector approach that would bypass our standard defensive screen, and the energy signatures are fluctuating in a coordinated pattern. I believe, yes, they're attempting to establish a resonance field. A trap, James realized. They want us to pursue individual vessels so they can surround and isolate our ships. Clever, Vkr'lak acknowledged. Had we continued our standard attack pattern, we would have played directly into their strategy. James nodded, a strange sense of pride mixing with his tactical concern. They're learning from us, just as we've learned from them. How do we respond, Commander? Asked Vkr'lak. James studied the display for a moment, then smiled. We give them exactly what they're expecting, then surprise them. Captain, request permission to implement contingency Harper 17. Vkr'lak's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, his species equivalent of raised eyebrows. Harper 17 hasn't been field tested yet. Neither has their new strategy, James pointed out. This is the perfect opportunity to test both. After a brief hesitation, Vkr'lak nodded. Permission granted. Implement Harper 17. James turned to the communications station. Kaleth, signal all Harper protocol units to prepare for dispersed engagement following Harper 17 parameters. Standard units maintain defensive screen formation. As Kaleth transmitted the orders, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency to prepare for the unorthodox maneuver. Harper 17 was one of James's more controversial tactical innovations, a deliberate feint designed to make the enemy believe their trap was working, only to spring a counter-trap at the critical moment. All units acknowledge and ready, Kaleth reported. Execute, ordered Vkr'lak. The unified fleet dispersed in apparent response to the Krell maneuver, individual ships pursuing the scattered enemy vessels. From the Krell perspective, it would appear that their strategy was succeeding perfectly. They're taking the bait, Vkr'lak reported, their skin rippling with patterns of tense anticipation. Krell vessels are adjusting course to complete their encirclement pattern. Maintain current heading, James instructed. Let them think they have us. For several tense minutes, the two fleets danced through space, each vessel moving according to the complex choreography of the battle plan. To an outside observer, it would appear that the unified forces vessels were being drawn into a massive three-dimensional net. Resonance field is beginning to form between Krell vessels, Drell reported. Energy levels rising. They will achieve full activation in 43 seconds. Perfect, James nodded. Right on schedule. All units, prepare for Phase 2 on my mark. As the Krell vessels moved to complete their encirclement, energy arcs began to form between them, visible manifestations of the resonance field they were generating. Whatever this new weapon was, it was clearly designed to trap and neutralize multiple targets simultaneously. 30 seconds to full field activation, Drell announced. Stand by, James replied calmly. Zenzi, prepare for maximum acceleration on my mark. Ready, Commander, the avian officer confirmed, her feathers slightly raised in anticipation. 20 seconds. All Harper protocol units report ready for Phase 2, Kaleth added. 15 seconds. Krell vessels are committing fully to the encirclement, Vkr'lak observed. They believe we're trapped. 10 seconds. James watched the tactical display with intense focus, waiting for the precise moment when the Krell would be fully committed, when their trap would be at its strongest, but also at its most vulnerable. 5 seconds. Phase 2, James ordered. Now. In perfect synchronization, every Harper protocol unit throughout the fleet executed the same maneuver simultaneously. Instead of continuing their apparent retreat into the Krell trap, they suddenly reversed course and accelerated directly toward the nearest Krell vessel, specifically targeting the points where the resonance field was being generated. The maneuver caught the Krell completely by surprise. Their encirclement strategy required precise positioning to maintain the resonance field, and the sudden aggressive counterattack disrupted their carefully calculated formation. Direct hit on resonance generators, Vkr'lak reported as the first strikes landed, field integrity dropping rapidly. Press the advantage, Vkr'lak ordered. All units, continue Phase 2 engagement. The battle shifted dramatically as the unified forces vessels executed the coordinated counterattack. Without their resonance field, the dispersed Krell ships were vulnerable, unable to support each other effectively. Krell flagship is attempting to rally their forces, Drell reported. They're signaling for a reformation of their battle line. Not today, James replied. Zenzi, bring us around for a direct approach on the flagship. Kaleth, signal strike groups 2 and 4 to converge on our position. Acknowledged. Both officers responded simultaneously. The Intrepid swung around in a tight arc, accelerating toward the Krell flagship with two strike groups falling into formation alongside. The massive insectoid vessel attempted to evade, but the coordinated approach cut off its escape vectors. "Target their propulsion systems," Vkr'lak ordered. "Disable, don't destroy." The precision strikes hit their mark, leaving the Krell flagship drifting, its biological propulsion systems temporarily neutralized. Throughout the battlefield, similar scenes played out as the Harper Protocol units systematically disabled the scattered Krell vessels. "Krell fleet is in disarray," Vkr'lak reported, their skin glowing with patterns of triumph. 70% of their vessels have been neutralized or disabled. The remainder are retreating. "Let them go," James said quietly. Vkr'lak glanced at him. "Commander, they need to report back," James explained. "Let them tell the others what happened here today." The captain considered this, then nodded. "Agreed. All units, cease pursuit of retreating vessels, secure disabled targets, and prepare for recovery operations." As the bridge crew carried out these orders, James moved to the tactical station where Vkr'lak was analyzing the battle data. "Their new resonance weapon," he inquired. "What was it designed to do?" "Based on the energy signatures, it appears to have been meant to disrupt our ship's neural interfaces," Vkr'lak replied. "A sophisticated attempt to target the biological components of our technology rather than the technology itself." "Clever," James nodded, "and potentially devastating if it had worked." "But it didn't," Vkr'lak pointed out, their skin shifting to patterns of thoughtful blue. "Because you anticipated their evolution." "As they anticipated ours," James replied. "That's the nature of warfare, Lieutenant Commander. A constant dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation." "A dance that never ends?" Vkr'lak asked, their tone carrying a subtle weight. James understood the real question behind the words. In 2 years of nearly continuous conflict, they had all begun to wonder if there would ever be an end to this war. "All dances eventually end," he said quietly. "The question is how." "Captain," Kaleth called from the communications station, interrupting their philosophical moment. "We're receiving a transmission from the disabled Krell flagship." Vkr'lak straightened in his command chair. "A transmission? The Krell have never attempted communication before." "Confirmed," Kaleth replied, his crystalline features registering surprise. "It's being broadcast on all Unified Forces frequencies." "Put it through," Vkr'lak ordered. The main view screen shifted from the tactical display to a visual feed from the Krell vessel. For the first time, they saw the interior of a Krell command center, a nightmarish blend of biological and mechanical components pulsing with alien purpose. In the center stood a Krell unlike any they had encountered before, larger than the command-class warriors, with an exoskeleton that gleamed with an almost metallic iridescence. The creature seemed to radiate authority. Multiple compound eyes focused on the camera, and when it spoke, the translation matrix struggled to convert the complex chittering into understandable language. "Unified Forces vessel," the translation finally rendered. "You have demonstrated unexpected tactical evolution." The bridge crew exchanged glances of shock. In 2 years of conflict, the Krell had never attempted communication, leading many to believe they were incapable of or uninterested in dialogue. Vkr'lak recovered first. "This is Captain Vkr'lak of the Unified Forces vessel Intrepid. We acknowledge your transmission." The Krell's mandibles moved in a pattern that the translation matrix couldn't interpret. "Your combat methodologies have changed, adapted, become efficient." "As have yours," Vkr'lak replied carefully. "The resonance strategy was insufficient," the Krell acknowledged. "Your counter-strategy was impressive." James stepped forward. "May I?" he asked Vkr'lak quietly. The captain nodded, gesturing for him to proceed. "This is Commander James Harper, Strategic Operations Officer," James introduced himself. "I'm curious, why communicate now, after 2 years of conflict?" The Krell seemed to study him, compound eyes focusing and refocusing. "You are different, not like the others. Your species is new to this collective." "I'm human," James confirmed. "From Earth." "Human," the Krell repeated, the words sounding strange through the translation matrix. "Your combat methodologies are distinctive, adaptive, unpredictable." "We've had a lot of practice," James replied dryly. "Yes," the Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly. "We have observed this. Your species understands necessary conflict." The implication was clear and troubling. Had the Krell been studying humanity specifically? "If you understand the concept of necessary conflict," James said carefully, "then you must also understand the concept of unnecessary conflict." The Krell was silent for a moment, its alien physiology giving no clue to its thoughts. Finally, it responded. An interesting distinction. One we have not previously considered. Perhaps it's time you did, James suggested. This war has cost both sides substantially. War? The Krell's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion. This is not war. This is testing. Evaluation. A chill ran down James's spine. Evaluation? Of what? Survival worthiness, the Krell replied, as if the answer was obvious. All species must demonstrate adaptability, resilience, will to persist. You've been testing us? Vkr'lak interjected, his forearms tensing in barely controlled anger. All new species encountered must be evaluated, the Krell confirmed. Those who cannot adapt cannot survive what comes. What comes? James asked, a sense of foreboding growing within him. What are you preparing for? The Krell's compound eyes seemed to focus more intently. The Devourers. They approach from beyond the galactic rim. We have fled them for millennia, preparing, strengthening, testing others to find allies. The bridge fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. The Krell weren't conquerors. They were refugees preparing the galaxy for something worse. These Devourers, James said finally. Tell us about them. They consume everything. Worlds, species, stars. They cannot be reasoned with. Only survived. And your attacks on our colonies? The millions of lives lost? Vkr'lak demanded. That was all just a test? Necessary evaluation, the Krell insisted. Weak resistance invites annihilation. The Devourers destroy completely. You must be prepared. James felt a complex mix of emotions. Anger at the casual dismissal of so much suffering, but also a growing understanding of the Krell's alien perspective. From their view, they were performing a harsh but necessary service, culling the unprepared to save those with potential. How long? He asked. How long until these Devourers arrive? Uncertain. Perhaps one of your centuries, perhaps less. They are difficult to track. And now? Vkr'lak pressed. What happens now that we've passed your evaluation? The Krell's mandibles moved in a pattern that might have been satisfaction. Now, alliance becomes possible. Preparation becomes shared. You expect us to simply forgive your attacks and join forces? K'leth rumbled from his station, his silicon form vibrating with barely contained anger. Forgiveness is irrelevant, the Krell replied. Survival is paramount. Your adapted combat methodologies. The compound eyes focused on James. Particularly those of the humans, show promise against the Devourers. James exchanged glances with Vkr'lak. This was far beyond their authority to negotiate, but the implications were staggering. We will need to consult with the Security Council, Vkr'lak said finally. This information changes everything. Consult, the Krell agreed. We will wait, but not long. Preparation cannot be delayed. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Could it be a deception? Vkr'lak asked finally, their skin shifting through patterns of uncertainty. To what end? James replied. They could have continued fighting without revealing any of this. If what they say is true, Drell observed, their forked tongue flicking rapidly as they processed the information, then the conflict we've been engaged in is merely a prelude to something far worse. And our kill counts, James added quietly, may need to grow much larger before this is truly over. Vkr'lak turned to face his bridge crew. Whatever the truth, our immediate duties remain clear. Secure the disabled Krell vessels, prepare a complete report for the Security Council, and maintain combat readiness. We don't know if all Krell share this one's perspective. As the crew set about these tasks, James moved to the viewport, gazing out at the disabled Krell flagship drifting against the backdrop of stars. The revelation had cast everything in a new light. Their struggles, their adaptations, even his own role in transforming the unified forces' approach to combat. 2 years ago, he had been viewed with suspicion and fear because of his kill count. Now that experience might prove to be exactly what this galaxy needed to survive. The irony wasn't lost on him. Neither was the weight of what might come next. Vkr'lak joined him at the viewport, their iridescent skin reflecting the starlight. Your thoughts, Commander? I'm thinking about necessary and unnecessary conflict, James replied softly, and wondering which category this falls into. Does it matter? Vkr'lak asked. If the threat is real, James turned to face his former student, now a trusted colleague and friend. It always matters. The necessity doesn't make the killing easier. It just makes it possible to live with afterward. Vkr'lak's skin shifted to a deep, thoughtful blue. I understand now, I think. Why your kill count was so high, yet you remained whole. You never lost sight of the difference. And neither have you, James pointed out.
None of you have. That's what makes me proudest of what we've built here. As the Intrepid's recovery team set about securing the disabled Krell vessels, James couldn't help but wonder what new chapter was beginning. If the Krell were telling the truth, then everything up to this point had been merely preparation for a much greater threat. A threat that would require all the combat experience, all the tactical innovation, all the hard choices that had defined his career. A threat that might finally bridge the gap between humans and the rest of galactic civilization, united in the most basic of all imperatives: survival. Whatever came next, James Harper knew one thing with certainty. The kill counts would rise, but they would rise with purpose. Not with joy, not with pride, but with the grim determination of those who understood that sometimes survival demanded terrible choices. And perhaps, just perhaps, in that shared understanding, humans had found their true place among the stars. The end.